Okay, I'm getting ready to replace the hose that runs from the heat exchanger and then it goes into the exhaust. So this is after the engine's been cooled and it's salt water that goes through this hose. So you can see down in the bottom left there's a orange color hose attached to the heat exchanger. And at any rate, I'm going to replace it because it's been pieced together in pieces. So it goes this way from the engine, and now we're going aft towards the back of the boat. And you can see the orange hose there. And it's connected to a black hose, piece of black hose, and it's connected to another piece of black hose. And then it goes back here, and the black hose there that runs in to the exhaust just past the flex pipe that I just replaced. So that black hose there. So I want to replace that whole thing. It's pieced together with a bunch of hose clamps, and I don't like that. And I do have one length of hose that will fit the whole distance. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, I got the saltwater exhaust hose hooked here to the heat exchanger. So that blue tube there that it's hooked to, it looks like a copper end on it. That's where the salt water comes through the heat exchanger and cools the engine, and then it exhausts out through that black hose with the green stripe on it. That's what I just attached, and hooking it to that fitting there, that brass looking fitting, it took me probably about 3 hours to get it on there. I tried soap, I couldn't hardly get it on there. It only go on about 1/4 of an inch and pop off, and because it was such a hard turn there. And then I tried heating it with a heat gun, making it soft. Maybe it'd go on. No, that didn't work either. So what I ended up doing is using my Dremel tool, and I have a little round bit on it, and I ground out the inside of the hose. And so I was able to get it on there good enough to get the hose clamp on there. It's about as good. It's probably a little bit better than the previous owner had. It's at least as good. It looks like it's a little bit farther. Unfortunately, I can only put one hose clamp on it. It's above the water line, so if it comes loose, it'll just spew water all over the place inside there, salt water. But the boat won't sink because eventually I'll probably figure out when the bilge pump comes on that I got a leak. So I think the way it's in there, though, it'd be almost impossible for it to come off, even if that hose clamp came loose. It'd be very difficult. And there's not a lot of pressure in it. It's just water going through, and so it goes this way, and here it is down here, and it runs along here. I got some zip ties holding it up. Oh, there goes the Blue Angels going off to their show here in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's time for it's Fleet Week, so it's time for the Blue Angels. And here it is going out, and it goes into the exhaust. You can see the flex tube I put on yesterday, that real shiny tube. And so the water's injected just past that. And again, I don't like this setup, because this should be that connection going into the exhaust should be right up close to the engine, and right where the exhaust manifold comes off the engine. Usually there's an elbow that points downward, and then the salt water is connected to that elbow. Just usually it should be a little bit below the level of the exhaust manifold, so salt water doesn't get back in the engine. There is where it goes in to the exhaust pipe, the hose with the green stripe, and the shiny tube there is the flex tube. That's where the exhaust is. So that's just gas, the exhaust going out there, and then the salt water gets injected into the exhaust pipe, and that kind of cools it down, and it gives somewhere for the water to go. That's why when you see a boat motor running, you'll see the exhaust coming out of a hole, usually somewhere on the hull, and you'll see water coming out too. So that's what that's about. But that is not in a good place. The that where the salt water goes into the exhaust should be closer to the engine, right right where the exhaust manifold is connected to the engine. Usually there's an elbow that points downward, and then usually you inject the salt water after it's been through the heat exchanger and cooled the engine, and so it's hot water, hot salt water, gets blown into the exhaust pipe, and it usually goes through a water lift muffler and then out through the exhaust. This is pretty far down the line. That silver pipe there should have been had the salt water in it all the way from up here where the exhaust is, and you can see right there is the manifold. It's the blue thing. Let me get the light on it. So that's the exhaust manifold. That rusty thing is the pipe, and then there's the elbow. Now you can see they had a connection where you can inject salt water in, but it should be down farther where the elbow points downward. That's up too high. The problem with that is salt water can get back into your engine, and that's not good at all. So basically, where that little plugged hose is, and how it's got a pipe welded into it, that would be your hot exhaust or hot salt water from cooling the engine. Should be down here, farther down, just a little bit farther. It doesn't have to be much. But at any rate, the way that this boat's set up, there's no way you can put that in there. And then normally you'd go through a water lift muffler, but there's not a lot of room in here for one. It's probably possible, but the exhaust would have to be redone. This exhaust tube is really big. I don't understand why it's so big in diameter. But at any rate, so these wires that are black wires going across the exhaust pipe, they're just sitting in there for right now. It's not that's not how it goes, because that pipe gets hot. And then so anyway, yeah, and then the exhaust just comes out and then goes through the flex tube there, comes up, and then right there for the black hose with the green stripe, that's where the salt water gets injected into the exhaust. So anyway, it's all finished. Took a few hours, but it looks good. So I'm happy with it. It should work fine. Okay, I just ran the engine. First time with the new flex tube in here. And I felt around with my hand. And trust me, it's a lot better than what was in here before. It was totally busted in half. But at any rate, I could feel very little exhaust leak, just slightly. I think some of it's because of the U-bolts. There might be a little blow-by there, and it's coming out of the flex tube where it's attached to the flange. Normally, you'd probably want that all welded, but at any rate, I went with the U-bolts, and it's very slight. I think I'm also getting a slight amount of exhaust leak where the two flanges are connected together. I have a graphite gasket that I made on each side. So it got a slight exhaust leak. So I'm going to have to probably go back and tighten those bolts up again on the flanges and everything. Just tighten up everything. I just did. I tightened up the U-bolts again, and it didn't really seem to help much. As far as the flanges themselves, with the graphite gaskets, you torque them down to 20 foot-pounds of torque. And I don't have a torque wrench. It'd have been hard to get in there with one anyway, even the ratchety kind. You couldn't definitely get in there with a bendy kind. But the other way you can tell if the gaskets are crushed down tight enough is you crush them down to 50%. Well, when I used just a box wrench on tightening those, and I know I was putting more than 20 foot-pounds of pressure on those wrenches, and it didn't crush hardly at all, so it's not 50% on the crush. But at any rate, I'm going to go, I ran it for a while, let it heat up, and then I have to come back and tear all this open again to hook up my battery cable. My battery cables are not long enough, so I got a red battery cable. Previous owner didn't color code them, but the one on the right there is the positive, and I got a 4/0 cable that I got to build and put lugs on it, and so I'm gonna do that side. The negative side, I think I'm okay for now, so I'm gonna have to do that because I had to relocate he had inside of here he had 2 huge lead acid batteries. They were a combination bank and starter batteries, and I wouldn't recommend those. They're not good starter, well, they're pretty good starter batteries, but you need, try to get batteries that are designed for 2 different things, and to one package. It's not the best. So, and it was the 2 batteries were, well, they weren't as big as my lithium battery bank there, but they were longer. But at any rate, I had to go to a starter battery because I can't start my engine with these lithiums right yet. I still have a converter I have to put in if I want to do that. And so, but at any rate, so this battery here is going to go right in here, right up against this wall here. And I got a floor pieces that go in and cover this up. So there's a floor down there. And but at any rate, and here's my battery charger that I use. It's a PowerMax battery charger, and I love the thing. It's what's really cool about this is if you can see the 2 holes there on the side pointing up. One is for regular 3-stage charging, and so it charges lead acid batteries because you have to have the charger charged at 3 different rates to properly charge lead acid. And so what it does is it starts with bulk and it pushes a lot of power into the battery, and then it cuts the battery charge back as it starts to charge, and then it goes from that into just like a very small trickle charge. So there's 3 phases to the charging for lead acid. With lithium, you don't need that, and it's best to have a charger that's just full on charging full blast. And what's nice about this is the hole that's on the top there, on the side, actually on the side of it that's facing up, that's a voltage adjustment, and so you can adjust it from 16.5 volts, which is more than you want to charge a lithium bank, but it's pushing it, and then all the way down to 13 volts. So you stick a screwdriver in there and you can adjust the voltage, and so that's really nice because then you can control what the charge, how high you're going to charge your lithium bank. And I set it to 13.7. It's a safe bet, but you can go all the way up to like 14.5, 14.6. You definitely don't want to go up to 16, but you don't really want to go past 14.6, I believe. But so if you go to 14.6, you're going to charge the lithium battery bank all the way to 100%. But I keep it around 13.7 just to be on the safe side, and so that's what I got it set at. And that's really nice to have that feature because most of these lithium chargers, you can't really adjust the voltage. Some of them you can, some of them you can't. But at any rate, yeah, it works great. It's 55 amps, and it does the trick. It charges my bank here, and so at any rate. So that's it for today. I did have some excitement here when I was running my engine. Here's my strainer that I put in, and what happened was I was flushing the salt water out of the engine. So I ran salt water first, and I'm running it, and run the engine, testing everything, looking for exhaust leaks. And then down here I have my the previous owner set this up where he has the through-hole fitting there to let the salt water in, and then the black hose, the bigger diameter one with the green stripe on it, that's the salt water that goes into the impeller on the engine, and it goes through the heat exchanger right down there, and then comes out that black hose there that I just put in today, and then goes through the exhaust. And so what he did was he added this green garden hose that connects to the dock faucet outside that's fresh water, and there's 2 valves down there, and you turn, so when you want to flush the engine at the end of the day, or when you're done running the engine, he flushes fresh water through it. And so I went ahead and I've done this before, but I didn't have the strainer in there. It was just a straight hose from salt water going straight into the impeller pump, which is not good because you need to be able to filter out anything that can get in there. And that's why I put the strainer in. So anyway, I shut the salt water valve off, and I turned the freshwater valve on, and I turned the hose on outside, and it was flushing it out just like I've done before, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, I was out in the cockpit at the wheel, and I heard this big explosion. And then I saw a bunch of smoke coming out of my engine. And I thought I had a fire. I thought major disaster. Well, it turned out I had the hose faucet turned up too high, and it blew the lid off of this strainer, and it blew the lid off, and water was gushing all over my engine. Hot engine. Luckily I didn't hurt anything. I was worried it was going to crack the block or something, but no, I'm okay. So at any rate, that's a lesson to me. I have to turn the hose on very little. Now I'm not sure if running fresh water through here and flushing it is really a good idea. I've heard someone once tell me that if you have a boat that's in salt water and you move it into fresh water, like say up into the Delta. I'm in the San Francisco Bay here, and the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta, that's all runoff from the Sierra Mountains. That's fresh water. There's no electrolysis problem, but after they've been in fresh water for a while, when you, and this is what this guy told me, I don't know, I need to look into it, but when you take that boat back down into salt water, then you start having electrolysis problems with your prop decaying. Your zinc's starting to decay, which can damage your prop. Same thing with your rudder post and your prop shaft. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to look into that. But if that's the case, then I'm probably going to stop using fresh water to flush this engine out, because that may not be good. So at any rate, so far so good. But the hose that I connected in here with the green stripe there, no leaks there, and no leaks here, and it's holding tight there on the connection. And so everything's good, and that's it.